Playing Possum Podcast.
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 Playing Possum Podcast. Hello, and welcome back to the Playing Possum Podcast.
Hello.
Hi.
I'm Katherine, and I am a woodworker and educator. I live in Corvallis, and this is our second episode, and we finally got past episode 1. What? Go back and watch it or listen if you haven't.
I'm Jamie, and I overslept.
Hi, I'm Kacey, and I'm going to have a party sub for lunch.
Ooh, party sub. What? Where'd that come from?
I made that up. I'm not
Oh my
actually
God.
going to. I don't know. I've been trying to harness like my my inner podcaster and come up with something silly to say.
I like that one.
Is party subs like a place, or it's an idea?
Like a giant
like
sandwich.
like a 5-foot sub, like a 5-foot like ham and turkey, little provolone.
Ooh, yes. Okay, I do remember those
Yeah, like a-
from like
Yeah,
if everybody
gorge on deli
in
meat.
class got their checks, get one of those really long. I think it was Blimpie that made them, right? Is Blimpie still a thing?
No. The last Sizzler is in Oregon. I will tell you that. We still have one. Yeah.
We're in the home of a lot of laughs because I think the Blockbuster's still over here
We're
too.
we like the thing.
Actually, R.I.P.
Yeah. So I think you could easily get a
Mm.
party sub in Oregon, no problem.
Yeah,
we
no
had
problem.
one
That sounds true.
the night before our wedding. We had a party sub for our friends at a bar.
I
Yeah.
believe that.
Very
Mhm.
odd.
Yeah. Well, what are we even talking
How
about?
rare I
What
hate
are we even talking about today?
Oh, starting something new, huh?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. Like a little reflection on how getting this project has been going and some new things in each of our own disciplines that's new for us. Or maybe practices rather than disciplines, because I think I'm a little all over the place to say I have just one.
All right, so the challenges and dramas of starting something new.
Drama.
It's been Degrassi the Next Generation for
Yeah,
us.
it has been.
Oh. Well, there were all the technical issues that had to be solved. Thankfully, we have a Kacey Montgomery on our team who knows how to put out those fires and
Yeah.
connect those dots.
Yeah, we had a wildfire trying to just get recorded the first episode. I think we probably did it 3 or 4 times, and it just like was not recording. And we started by using pod ops, and this is definitely not an ad for them at all. Like, don't. And since then, I was going through my closet, and I found a pod ops t-shirt that I got from a podcasting conference in Vegas, and I was just like, F you, Podbean, or not Podbean, pod ops. Whatever. I think you get the picture.
Right. So if if episode 1 didn't feel fresh, there might be a reason for that.
Like, we just got to do it and get it done with so we can move on.
Yeah. I think the first time we tried to record, I messed up. I pressed the wrong thing that was okay, first of all, why this is even an option, but you can pick record only me. So the whole thing was just me recorded, and there's like a lot of me being like, but like no one else talking, and like it was so rough. Like I was really bummed out. Like Marcia was like, it's okay, and I was just I was really sad about it because I felt like I had really let you guys down because like we were like, that was so good.
That content was fire.
Yeah.
What content? 45 minutes of you agreeing.
Oh my God, we should make that into memes, like for people to be able to like have someone listening to them is just me being like,
on a loop.
oh my god, yes. Yeah.
So there was that. There was
Yeah.
there were the times that it didn't record, and I think that happened to us twice.
Yeah. No, I think 3 times.
At least
I
once.
think
And
3 times.
3 times. Okay.
yeah, and then there
move
was the
to-
time that we got it, but then we couldn't log back into Pod Ops to like look at our library like ever again.
They're like, we saw your content and you're blocked.
It's You're like, what? Just give us a credit card number and then share us again. So,
Oh my god, it
to
was the
budding
worst.
podcasters, we instead recommend Riverside. The Kacey
Yeah,
found.
Riverside seems to be reliable.
Thank you, Riverside.
Yeah, and Podbean. I think I said F Podbean 5 minutes ago, but I didn't mean it. I meant Pod Ops. F you Pod Ops. I'm trying to keep it PG.
Oh yeah, we want to. Yeah. Yeah, it was hard, and I think it's a good reminder of how hard it is to start something new, even though, you know, Kacey has worked in this medium before, does a podcast, like just starting something new, you know, is really hard. And collaborating together, like finding time to record, all of that has taken time. And I think it's just a lot to do. And it's not to be like, poor us, listen to our podcast, we're so sad. But I think why we want to talk about it today is that I think as creatives, we're often either exploring new mediums or you're starting like, you know, a new series of something or whatever it is, that it's really tough to sort of get past all of that stuff. And there, each time you hit those barriers, right? Like the first time I did that recording mishap, I was like literally playing dead on the floor. Like I was like rolling myself up in the rug and I was like, I messed up. And like, it was brutal. Like it is so hard to be like, have all this energy that we had put in and we were like ready to go and we were like putting our energy forward. And then just a huge barrier of like, no, this isn't it. And then to be able to like do it again. And you guys really like bolstered me back up, you know, and you were like, don't worry about it and all of that. And so I think it was really helpful. Like, I think if I was doing that by myself, I would have just given up because I was so bummed out. And I think it's really easy to be like, to try something new and to hit those barriers and think it means something about you or your ability because, you know, that's a really easy place to go versus being like, oh, starting something new is really hard and I am going to hit these barriers.
Yeah, totally.
Well, in the
Go ahead,
spirit
Jamie.
of transparency, we started this back in July, August. Does anybody remember?
Yeah, I think that.
Something like that. It was still warm
so
outside.
It took several months just to get to the recording part of it. Just curious.
Yeah, the amount of work just to get to releasing episode 1 was kind of overwhelming because you think like, oh, we're just going to sign up for a recording platform and a place to distribute and we're going to go and it's going to be flawless and seamless. And there was so much planning and team building and just like asset creation that had to happen before we could even publish because it's like, well, if we publish and then we don't have like social media, then no one's going to know that it's even there. And then like, how are we going to like get people to stay hooked? Like we have to have other resources because I think the general goal is to build Playing Possums into a bigger like resource than just a podcast at some point. So we're like trying to see the big picture to get to like just episode 1 that we recorded like 27 times.
Well, is anybody starting anything new?
I started something new to do for this art walk that I did last weekend. I made bolo ties. What? And that was like a totally new thing for me. Like, and it took a long time, and I had a lot of like mishaps of like, I bought some things like, so I'm making them out of kind of like old brooches, and like some of the stuff I got really didn't work. And then just being able to find everything I needed took a long time, and a lot of learning. Like and there was this moment where I made one and I was like, this really isn't working, and I knew I had to throw it away, and I was just like, like I really don't want to, like I put so much energy into this and I really don't want to throw it away. But the first person I ever apprenticed with, this guy, Richard Schrader in Athens, like, I feel like the best thing I learned from him is like, he just had a pile of stuff that was like half like worked through problems as he was starting a new, whatever it was. Like when I started working with him, he was trying to figure out how to blacksmith this like pine cone door handle. And so he just went through so many versions of it, and that he was okay just getting rid of, like solving a problem and then moving on to the next one. And that has always been really hard for me, because I think once I start putting energy into something, I'm like, no, like it becomes a little bit precious to me. And so I think that is always a lesson for me of like, you can, like when you are starting something new, you probably are going to go through some versions, like our podcast, right? Like we had many recordings that never saw the light of the day. And so whether it was choice or not, but it's like, I think we all agreed that like actually having those and not using them actually helped us improve. So
Definitely. I was about to ask you if there was like a pile of stuff that you kept for those times where it didn't work out, because I know that I'll start something and I'm like, this is crap, but I feel like I put enough of my energy into it that it hurts to throw it away.
yeah,
Not me. I paint right on it. I paid for that paper or that canvas. We're gonna use it. But yeah, I I'll have false starts. Something will not be going my way from the get go, and an older habit as a student is I would abandon it and immediately start something else. Which is not necessarily the great way to do things. You kind of got to work through problems, learn a few things on the way. And I would say it took a long time for me to learn that lesson. It's like you just got to keep going. When starting something new is difficult and challenging. This is not true 100% of the time. Sometimes you are confronted with some crap that you just made. You do probably need to walk away from. But yeah, I would encourage folks to just work through it. And it might be trash, but something with value.
I often feel like, yeah, definitely like some value in just like sitting with it for a minute.
Right.
Yeah, I often feel like I need to be an expert right out of the gate. Like I need, like, if I'm going to like, I don't know, like if I was working on the zine, for example, and I was like, oh, this poster, like my first draft didn't work out, like, fuck it, we're not gonna do, excuse me, sorry, we're not gonna do a poster in the middle, like it'll just be the zine, because it wasn't good. But I think that also negates the design process a little bit. But I guess my question is do either of you ever feel like if you don't do something right the first time that it's not worth doing?
Yeah, I used to struggle with that. It related to what I was saying earlier. Like in my mind, I knew how this was going to unfold, and when it started going left, yeah, many times it would start over. But no, it's important to just keep moving and get through it. And if you have just made something that's you don't want to share or whatever, you'll be better when you start again. So
Yeah. Well, I think I talked about this in the first episode that I um am not the best at like finishing things. Like I'm really good, and I think some of that is like my ADHD brain is like I'm always searching for new things. So I think starting new things is actually really easy for me. I'm like new, shiny, great, and then actually getting through to the end is a little bit harder for me. So I have a lot of half done or 60% done. I did hear somewhere and like talking about ADHD that like ADHD brain feels like a project is done at 60%, and like they just move on. And so I like to hold on to that and think that's why I'm like that. But I think some of it is that like that starting something new is actually like shiny for me, but then yeah, if it didn't turn out the way I wanted to, or like it's not exactly what I thought, or I come into a design challenge or whatever, and then it's like, oh, I'll just move on. And so I think coming back, my goal of this coming year is to come back around on a lot of projects that I sort of stalled out because of those barriers. And like I think like what we were talking about is like it really helped me get past that barrier when I had the support of y'all. And like I think when I'm doing solo projects, I often just like move sideways and I'm like, what about this project? So yeah.
yeah, I'm with
Totally.
you. Starting things is not my problem, but finishing them can.
Yeah.
So yeah, I have a wall full of unfinished works.
Yeah.
Some going back a couple of years,
Yeah, me too.
bigger pieces and stuff. They will be finished eventually, but yeah, I guess sometimes it's easier to start something new than it is to finish something you've been working
Yeah.
on a long time.
I will say though, oh, sorry. Go ahead, Kacey.
I was gonna say I just have the exact opposite problem where I want to like start something and then immediately kick it right into the done bin. And like the first draft is the draft, like what draft? It's the thing.
Uh,
But I was even noticing that so I've been starting a new project. I've been working with Kat in the wood shop to make a big like slab for a sign for work, but also I'm making like a little coffee table. And I was noticing that as in one of our first sessions, we're like trying to figure out how we're going to flatten this warped plank or like slab of wood. And you'd be like, should we do this? And I was like, yes. Or maybe we could do this. And it was like, yes. And it was just like, let's just do it. And I feel like, which it's so much, I think it's so much fun because I know so little about what I'm doing, but I'm just having to go do it. And I think every time I notice that I'm like, okay, today I'm going to be done. I'm going to finish the thing. And then I get some work done. And then I notice like, oh, there's something else I need to do. Like yesterday, or I guess it was a couple days ago, I got in there and I did all this planing and I used the joiner and I was like, okay, let's glue it up and then we're done. And then I realized like how heavy these things were. And it's like, I need to do some learn how to do some joinery to like keep them together. And it's like, oh, I guess I'm going to be here for like another week or two or, and it's just like, I think it's a good practice in slowing down and like really thinking about like what it could be rather than it is a coffee table or, it is a slab of wood. Like thinking about all the little things that I could use to learn, especially since there's no deadline for this project. I have time to play.
well, that's cool. I didn't know you were back in the wood shop.
Yeah. I think it's like one of these things I just kind of keep coming back to a little bit, just with in association to Cat, because otherwise I'd have like no, reason to be in there. But it's a lot of fun and it's so different than what I normally do.
Yeah, if you want a project to take a long time, you should try woodworking. Yeah, no, I think it's been really interesting too. Like, Jamey and I have worked together and known each other for a long time, and then bringing Kacey in on this project, it's like both of us are like whoa, we're like getting stuff done, and it's been really interesting for us because I think, we are great at like having ideas and trying things, but like bringing it all the way to the finish line has been hard. And so like I've been incredibly impressed that we have a podcast. Like I'm still like kind of blown away and astonished. And I think in some ways when it came out, it was intense for me because I think sometimes having something done and like having people look at it is the hardest thing for me. And I think that's sometimes why I don't finish projects is I'm like, I don't want anyone to look at it, and like I've told you guys this, but like my biggest fear response around people seeing my work is that like, which is like, there's no rationality around it, but I'm like, someone's going to take my stuff, my ideas or like whatever, which is like, I don't know, like for some reason in a podcast, I think it's probably a little less intense for me, but like even just putting my work out, I did this neighborhood art thing and like like people who came by but didn't buy anything, I'm like, oh, they're trying to take my ideas and like it's like, or they just didn't have any money with them, or they didn't like what I was offering, like whatever that is. But like it is I think that is like a big barrier for me to actually finishing things is like one is like this fear that once I put it out, then my idea is immediately going to get co-opted by the collective evil group of people I have out there just waiting for my ideas. So like, I mean, which is like, there has to be some version of like having a high ego around my work, but I don't know that that's really it. It's just that like, yeah, I don't know. I have such connection to that and like I want to keep it to myself, or I don't know what it is. But do either of y'all have that feeling? Or
I don't know if I have the feeling of that someone's gonna take my stuff, because I think more my problem is that like I'm like my stuff's not good enough to take, but I think I think it's really interesting hearing that perspective from you of like someone's going to take my stuff, because I think it's also like a real fear of artists. Like we're putting these ideas out there, and then who knows? Like maybe come June we'll see your like little rainbow marquetry stuff like at Target, for like $16.95, and then and it's like I think it's like a legitimate fear. It's just I don't necessarily struggle with it because I'm like, why would anyone buy my stuff? But that sounds kind of sad.
No, I think that is a very
that's a legitimate feeling.
And I definitely feel
Absolutely.
that. Like
I think a lot of creatives struggle.
Sorry, go ahead, Jamie.
Yeah, well, I think a lot of creatives struggle with that. I think we also struggle with pricing, because I know what it's worth to me, and I know what I would like for it, but what's the reality of what it's going to take to get it sold? And there are a whole lot of feelings wrapped up in coming around to an answer for all of that. The tough thing for me about starting something new with the podcast was I knew we were videoing it. I knew that we were going to have to show it to people eventually. But it totally caught me by surprise to have so many feelings around it. And for me, it's a control issue because I'm a huddle. I want to control things. I want to be in charge of it and everything. And I want to be in charge of how it's received and how it's disseminated and all of that. And it took a minute to get around it, but getting around it was the right answer. Just had to let go and just let it be, and let our three bobbing heads just out into the world, and whatever responses come back. Hi.
Hi.
That hearing you say that of like wanting to control how your work is received is really hit me, actually. Like I don't know if I've ever heard it like said that way, but I think that's another barrier for me of like finishing work is like I do like I want people to like it, and I want them to like it so much that they want to buy it, but then I also don't want them to take it. And that, like, I just have so many feelings around it. I'm like, I just want you to, like, and right, like, so much of that has really nothing to do with like that exact piece. It's like the inner, like, my need for someone to value me, of like, please say that I'm good and that my work is good, right? Because like what we are doing as artists is like we're bringing something that's inside of us into physical form into the world. And so when you do that, you're like basically like showing somebody like a piece of you. And then if they're like, that's too expensive, and it's like, you're like, oh my God, like I am too expensive. Like I'm not like, and it's like it was really interesting with the art walk this time is Marcia helped me price my stuff, and I've never done this because I'm always just like, I lowball my prices and I'm just like, I hope somebody buys it because I hope somebody thinks that I'm okay. And like, I'm just like, please, dear God, tell me that I'm okay. And this time Marcia was like, well, let's write down your labor and your material costs and all of that. And I was like, what? And so we did that and we priced my stuff accordingly. We still didn't go as high, like accurately. Like we also wrote down like, okay, this is how much like time I'm putting into the art walk, which is like a lot of people don't understand that like when you're doing like a show like that, it's like that's an additional like 25 hours of like prepping for the show, being at the show for 8 to 10 hours, decommissioning the show, like
Packing.
all of that. I still
Yeah,
haven't unpacked.
packing
That's
and
going to be another like 2 hours of work of just unpacking. And so like we didn't include any of
running
any of that labor. But it was like the first time when people did buy my work that I was like, I didn't feel like I was subsidizing them having the piece. Like it was like,
your art.
yeah, like, which I was like, oh my God, like you if you price your stuff accordingly, you won't resent people buying it. And I didn't know that. Like I didn't understand that. Like, because I've always lowballed my prices, and then what I didn't understand is that I am actually like subsidizing people having it with my work, right? Like my labor.
Totally. I think one of the best things I learned in school was this idea of charging for your work and being realistic about it, because if you start lowballing yourself, you're lowballing everybody else too. So it's like if you're gonna do if I was gonna shoot a wedding for $100, that lowballs everybody else and being like, well, this person did it for 100. Why would you charge me 1,000?
Right.
And yeah, so it's like I think we also owe it to each other to try our best to value our work accordingly.
Well, it's such an interesting conversation. It could be its own podcast episode, but I'm always interested in how artists charge for what it is that they do, and that's one of mine. One of the things that I do like talking to other artists about, because there's so many varied responses about how they do it. But I'd never thought of it from that perspective, Kacey, and I think that makes a lot of sense. Like you're not only lowballing yourself, you're affecting other creatives in your area if you don't value yourself and set your prices. So one of the best pieces of advice I got was to just start with something reasonable, and every time you sell something, know that it's okay to go up 1%, or 2% or something, or a greater percentage, whatever it is that makes sense. But think of it as a forward trajectory, and don't slide back.
Yeah, and I think too, like, I think artists know that most other artists are not really making very much like labor money, like living wage on their work. But I think other people don't always understand that. And so I think about it as like, if I recently, like in the last 3 days, I like am like, well, if I am pricing my stuff at X and my friends come buy it, they think they are actually supporting me versus me subsidizing them having it, right? And it's like, okay, well, what if I think about it as like being honest of like, versus like sort of in some ways like when we lower our prices, but there's so much pressure, like I think, for artists to lower their prices because people are like, oh, your stuff's so expensive. I wish I could have it, but your stuff's so expensive. And it's like, then it's like there's this pressure on me of like, oh, well, maybe I should lower my prices so people can have my work. And it's like, well, the thing is though that,
Or the pressure to make a sale because you need
well,
the
yeah,
money,
oh yeah, for sure.
Like,
Yeah.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's a big thing. But I think the thing is like, but then the people who come by my work, like, are usually other artists. And so it's like, it's a value thing, right? It's like, it's not a affordability thing. It's a value thing, like, right? And it's like, well, other artists know what it takes to make the work. And like, they're valuing that, like, this is something rad that was inside of you and you put it in the world. And I know all the barriers you had to come through to do that. And like, I'm super proud of you and I want to have this piece in my house or whatever. So I don't know. It's that I've been thinking about that a lot of like, why does it fall on artists to lower their prices versus why doesn't it fall on society to start valuing art?
Mhm. Yeah. I think there's like probably something to do with capitalism in here because, some people are like, they just, you can't afford to have something artisan, or there's like this idea of like, I want to have all the things. And so it would be so much easier for me to go on Amazon or Wayfair and buy a $20 thing to hang my coat on rather than a nice handmade coat rack that will probably last generations. And just like how people are using their money like that, where it's like, well, I could have a coat rack and go out to eat and get this other thing and this thing instead of just like valuing the craftsmanship. And I guess I don't know, I don't really know where I'm going with that, but I think there's so many factors that go into like building a value system around how you spend your money.
y'all remember like in the last couple of years, it was around the holiday time and there was that great jingle that kept going around with all like different artists and stuff were putting it with all their reels and stuff. And it was like, it costs this much because it takes me ducking hours.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Don't have ducking superpowers. And then there was another line that's like, it costs this much because exposure doesn't pay the bills.
Yeah.
Right.
Anyway, yeah. I need to look that up.
Wait,
'cause
so
that
are
brought
we
me a lot of
not
joy.
cussing on this podcast? Is that what we're deciding? Are we family friendly?
I didn't want to be the first one to do it. We'll just say that. I'm not
I
scared of
think
some adult words.
I was gonna say, I think I said the F word earlier.
I think, yeah, I did too. Or I said maybe yeah.
Well, I don't have fucking superpowers.
Okay. Oh, you did it. You were the second
wow.
or the third. We don't know. Someone will tell us.
It costs this much because it takes me fucking hours.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're adults. I
We'll
think
look
we
that
can
up.
cuss.
I'm going to look that up, listeners, and I will let you know what that is.
Yeah. Well, circling back to kind of what we were talking about and kind of piggybacking off of that, Jamie, is like, I think the thing about starting something new and what I think another hard thing is like that, how many fucking hours they're going to go in that don't end up in the final product. And so it's like, you're like, oh, this is just going to be like, a ton of like R&D to get this out in the world. And, the same mentor I was telling you that had like the pile of projects is like, I think he was saying, if somebody wants you to do something new that you haven't done before, and like, you don't charge them less, you charge them more because it's going to take more time. And like, they have come to you because they want your aesthetic or whatever it is that they want from you. And that actually and if you have to learn a completely new technique or work in a different medium or whatever it is, then it's like, actually, you need to be sure to include those learning hours in there. Have I ever done that? No. But do I know that I should? Yes. So,
That's valuable. It is, because I think a lot of times we sell ourselves short, and you know, put in way more time than we're getting paid for it.
I think that was one of my big things when we were starting this, and I could cut this if you want, Catherine, but I remember asking you about, like, how do you deal with putting in hours that you're not getting paid for? Because I've always been a person that's worked, like a W-2 job, and so like all my hours count. And I think one of my things going into this project was like, am I going to get burnt out because there's like not going to be compensation for a while, if ever, and how to deal with that? Because I think the goal of like a lot of people that are making art and selling art or just making creative things is like they want to do that all the time and be able to afford to do that all the time. And so I guess I wanted to ask you both about that, because
Those are the good years. Yeah.
yeah, what are your feelings on that?
I think.
Oh, it's been a struggle. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, go for it. I want to hear your answer, Jamey.
Ideally, I would be able to do this full time, and there have been times since I've started working for myself that I've been able to. But a lot of times that's been self-funded. And then only a few of the years have the work actually paid all the bills. So it's super satisfying when the stars align and there's enough momentum that is actually happening. Yeah, that's the dream for most creatives, for sure. Who wants to be burdened with making somebody else money? When you could be in your studio doing all the things. But I mean, the reality of it is, to do all the things, sometimes you gotta make somebody else some money. So, it is what it is. But I think we all know people that are fortunate enough to be able to do this full time. And it's exciting to see them have that opportunity. And, it's the goal, for sure.
I think when we talked, my answer to you was that I cried about it the day before. So that's usually my response when I feel like things are hard and it's like I'm not making money for the time that I'm spending. But I think there is something, I guess, for me around it, is like coming back to it and continuing to try feels like a form of activism in some way to me, of like that it's like to really value what's inside of me, is like it allows me to then value what's inside of me as like a queer person, or like, whatever that is like, it's there is some version of it, and I don't think it's necessarily I suggest the struggle, but I think there's something for me in it of like coming back even when there's not the payoff, is like that the work is worthwhile because it's actually going against all of sort of the things that I think people struggle with on a daily basis, is like that they're not valuable enough. And so to actually make art is like saying that you're valuable, and like just intrinsically as you are. And so that is some sort of payoff, I guess, to me, is that I feel like I'm sort of like giving a big fuck you to like the system. But and I think the more we do that, the more maybe we're doing something to change the system. I don't know if that's true, but there's a lot against it. But like, helping people value. And I think that's why I like teaching too, is like that you're helping somebody create something, and then they're understanding that like just their ideas and what's inside of them has value, and should be in the world, regardless of whether they make money around it or not. And I think, because we live in a capitalist society, you need money to be able to do the things, but there's still something there for me that's like, worthwhile. I also teach because that's another way I can make money more regularly.
Yeah, it sounds like you also get some personal gratification, or like you get some compensation out of providing value to other people, or like service to others.
So, well, on that cheery note, should we wrap up, or should we? What do you think?
So, start something new.
Yes, and share it with us on Instagram at plain.possum.collective.
And you can find us on
We want to
all
see
the
it.
things. Where can you find us, Kacey?
So we have a website, plainpossum.com, or no, plainpossumcollective.com. The collective part is important. And then Instagram at plain.possum.collective. We're also on Spotify. We're working on getting on to Apple. But we also have a YouTube channel where you can watch us if you want to see our beautiful faces while we're chatting. And I think that's it for right now.
I did find out there is a Playing Possum podcast about wrestling. So if you find that, that's not us. Keep looking.
I'm going to watch that later tonight.
We'll have a crossover episode.
Yes. Excellent.
I would love if we had a crossover episode with them. That'd be so funny. Possum on possum.
All right, don't play dead. See you next time. Toodles, possums.